There has never been any positive detection of any type of signal or structure that indicates an intelligent extraterrestrial origin. Now, this is not to say intelligent aliens do not exist elsewhere in our galaxy or in the universe. This is just saying we have yet to detect evidence of their existence. However, there are some observations that are somewhat intriguing. One example of this was the discovery of pulsars in 1967. So, we discussed pulsars at the end of Physics 113. We learned that at the end of the life of a very massive star, much more massive than the Sun, the upper layers of that star could collapse down, and the core of that star is compressed into a giant ball of neutrons that's only a few miles across, but contains more mass than our entire Sun. Now, this ball of neutrons is going to be spinning really, really fast by conservation of angular momentum, and the neutron star's magnetic field will collimate beams of radiation that sweep out from the neutron star's magnetic poles. Now, depending on the relative orientation of the neutron star that's spinning really fast and where the Earth is located, if one of these beams sweep over the Earth, we would observe that as a regular flickering. Now, if we were really close to the neutron star and a beam swept over us, that would be really bad for life, but because the Earth is so far away, we just see a flickering and it doesn't really have any significant effect on us. In 1967, when Jocelyn Bell first discovered the very first pulsar, it was believed that this regular repeating signal might be evidence of an alien beacon, and this led to them naming this first new class of object, LGM-1, for little green men. When this object was discovered, the regularity with which the object blinked rivaled the most precise atomic clocks of the day. So it was believed that there's no way nature could produce anything that would just blink or fluctuate in its brightness with such precision and regularity. But later on, a few more of these types of objects were discovered, and now we know that these are not actually extraterrestrial beacons. This is just the end result of the death of a very massive star. I am not going to claim to know or understand the motivations and psychology of an intelligent extraterrestrial species. However, I think it is reasonable to expect that if there are intelligent aliens out there, they are probably going to want to do something. Now, whatever that something is, whether it's building structures, exploring the galaxy, something else, the aliens will need some source of energy to power their machines and whatever else they're up to. A sufficiently advanced alien species might look to build giant Dyson spheres as a source of energy. To picture a Dyson sphere, just imagine a star that is surrounded by a vast array of solar panels. Now, this might seem like a lot, but the raw materials from a couple asteroids will provide you with enough material to build a Dyson sphere or a Dyson swarm. So it's not out of the realm of the possibility that these structures can be produced. A Dyson sphere, if it exists, is expected to give off certain characteristic signatures that can be searched for. For example, Dyson spheres, from the laws of thermodynamics, will have a certain amount of waste heat that we can search for. So if we have a catalog of the light output from the observation of many stars, it is possible to comb through that catalog and look for some stars that have a unusual light output, and then we could investigate those stars more, and see if it seems like there is a Dyson sphere surrounding that star. In 2009, the Kepler Space Telescope was launched to search for evidence of planets orbiting other stars. When a planet passes in front of a star, the bright light output of that star will temporarily dip because the planet is blocking some of the light from that star. And then if you observe the planet pass in front of the star several times, then that would be over several orbits of the planet around the star. You see several of those dips in the light output. Then you could infer that there's probably a planet orbiting that distant star. A star was observed that became colloquially known as Tabby star that had a very unusual dips in its brightness. And one possible incredibly unlikely but exciting explanation for the dips in these brightness was from an alien megastructure surrounding that star, like a Dyson sphere. Today, it's believed that this light output, the unusual dips in the light output from Tabby star, is most likely due to a swarm of comets orbiting the star. Probably the closest thing to a candidate for evidence of a signal from an extraterrestrial intelligence came to us from the WOW signal. Now, when I say most likely candidate, it is still incredibly unlikely that this signal is extraterrestrial in origin. But in 1977, the Big Air Radio Observatory at The Ohio State University observed a very bright signal from a point in the sky in the region of the constellation Sagittarius. Now, this signal has never been adequately explained, and this signal is really hard to pin down the actual origin of. There have been proposals which include some emission from some comets, but that explanation has its own problems with it. As far as the possibility of an alien origin, well, this signal has never been observed again, so it is hard to actually study it with only one data point. And also, this signal does not appear to contain any actual information in it. It is just a very narrow band, very bright, sudden increase in the intensity of a specific wavelength of light, and that's all there is to it. Now, one proposal for alien civilization that might want to announce their presence, whether it be intentionally or otherwise, would be to dump large quantities of rare or unstable elements onto a star. Anyone who is around doing astronomy and observing that star would see the characteristic fingerprints when they do spectroscopy on that star. And if you see elements that have no place being in that star, that could be evidence of aliens being around that star. If they are artificially dropping and dumping really heavy, really unstable elements onto the star. Przybylski's star is unusual in that it has been observed to contain some isotopes of promethium and plutonium that are very short-lived and seem to have no business being in the atmosphere of that star. Now, aliens are one incredibly long-shot explanation to this observation of Przybylski's star. Some more likely explanations to this are there may be some, as of right now, unknown nuclear physics going on that would produce these very unstable elements that are found in Przybylski's star. So for the time being, the star does remain a very interesting science target. So after this video, watch this star that might be hiding undiscovered elements, Przybylski's star, the WOW signal, and 3 messages we've sent to extraterrestrials. All of these videos are by SciShow Space, and they're all listed in the Phi 114 playlist. How could we communicate with an alien civilization? What would be the challenges that we need to work around to do something like this? To address this question, let's first think about what is communication. Suppose you and I are standing in a room, and suppose I want to communicate something to you. What would I need to do? Well, one very obvious thing I could do is I could say something to you. But let's think about what's really going on here. If I want to communicate something to you, that's kind of like saying I have an idea or a concept in my brain, and I want that same idea or concept to be in your brain. So you are thinking about the same thing that I'm thinking about. I'm trying to communicate something to you. Well, what would have to happen to accomplish that? I have an idea or concept in my brain. I would need to translate that idea or concept into words. I would then need to speak those words. The sound waves would come out of my mouth, travel through the air. They would then enter your ears. Your ears would detect those sound waves. Then your nervous system would translate those sound waves into electrical impulses. Those electrical impulses would travel from your eardrum into your brain through your nerves, and your brain would then need to interpret those electrical impulses. And if everything goes according to plan, your brain would interpret those electrical impulses, and then you would have the same idea or concept that was in my brain now in your brain. That is essentially what communication is. Now, by watching a video on YouTube, there are a few more steps. There is also a computer microphone. My computer is saving this recording as a file on it. I'm uploading that file to the internet. Your computer is then watching the video. You're watching the video on YouTube. So your computer is reaching out to YouTube, and then your computer has to get the data from YouTube, and then that data is changed into an audio file. So there's a few more steps in between that we're going through right now. Well, throughout this entire discussion, I was talking with somebody that I am on the same planet as, that I am have a similar species as. We are 98% genetically similar to chimpanzees. Our most recent common ancestor with chimpanzees lived about 250,000 generations ago. That is not very long in geological or astronomical time scales. We are very similar to chimpanzees from a species point of view, and our ability to communicate with the species that we are very similar to is very rudimentary. There are some other species on Earth that display a fair degree of intelligence, such as octopus, squid, dolphins, parrots. But our ability to communicate and meaningfully interact with all of these species is incredibly rudimentary. We cannot have a conversation with the depth and detail that we are having right now with any of these other species on Earth. Now, these are all species that we share a planet with. We all live in the same biosphere. How could we possibly hope to meaningfully communicate a message to an extraterrestrial species? That extraterrestrial species is completely separated from us in terms of biology. It evolved on a different planet with a different environment. That extraterrestrial species may have a very different psychology and outlook on the universe as us. It likely would be in a very different technological situation than us. There would be a ton of differences between us and any other intelligent alien. So how could we possibly hope to communicate a message to a species that we have no past connection to? Well, regardless, we could try. In 1974, a radio signal was sent from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. This signal contained information on Earth and the human species, and it looked something like this. So the signal itself was not a continuous transmission of radio waves. The telescope was sending out radio waves, and the telescope was either turned on or turned off. So for certain intervals of time, the telescope was either on or off. And in total, there were 1,679 intervals in the entire message that we want to send. So the message we sent for aliens to detect looks something like this. When the telescope was off, you could think of that as a 0. When the telescope was on, you could think of it as a 1. So the telescope was off, 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 on, off, on, off, on, off, on, lots more off. Here's a couple ons in a row, and so on. So, what's so special about 1,679 intervals? Well, for one thing, there are only two ways you could multiply two whole numbers together to get 1679. You could multiply 73 by 23, or you can multiply 23 by 73. I'm not counting 1 times 1679 for the purpose of this discussion. If you arrange this message as 23 rows and 73 columns, you would get, here are the black boxes are when the message is off, and the white boxes are when the message is on. Or you could arrange the message as 73 rows and 23 columns, and when you do that, you get something like this. So there are two possible ways to arrange the intervals in the message. Essentially, there are two possible ways to arrange the pixels in this message that we want to send. If we want aliens to receive this message and be able to understand it, as much as possible, we want to make the message easy to understand. Now, there are some very significant barriers to overcome, but this is kind of like solving a puzzle. If you get a puzzle, The goal here is to try to make it easy for the other one to solve, but you also know the other one has no background, very little in common with you. But if the aliens are aware of math, and presumably math will be the same everywhere in the universe, I expect that to be true and just the way nature works, then there are going to be only two possible ways to arrange these zeros and ones in a rows and columns. So in this case, we give the aliens two possible pictures to try to decode. One of these pictures is going to be a bunch of gibberish that is not quite random. The other picture is the message we want the aliens actually to see and be working on. So if the aliens receive this message, they could get their smartest aliens to work on it. You give one team one message, the other team gets the other message, and they're trying to decode it. This message is an example of an anti-coded message. If you think about what is a coded message, a message in code is intended not to be understood except by a certain individual that knows the secret to the code. An anti-coded message is the opposite. An anti-coded message is some type of message that is intended to be very easy to understand by anyone who receives it. Now here I have a broader notion of anyone. I mean not only human species, but alien species that are receiving the message that have presumably very little in common with us or how our brains work, the way in which we think. So this is the message that was intended to be received by aliens. Instead of many possible different combinations of rows and columns, we chose the number 1679, so there are only two possible combinations of rows and columns of our message. The colors in this diagram are added. They were not in the original message. They're just added to make it easier for this message to be seen by people, the different groupings, the different information that's contained in this message. So as I said, this is not to say the aliens that receive this message will be able to understand what we're sending them, but we're trying to make it easier on them. So what is in this message? Let's start at the top. It says right to left numbers 1 through 10. So here's the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How do we see that? How can we possibly infer the numbers 1 through 10 are contained there? Well, if you think about it, pick any whole number you want, like 998 or 7,576,847. No matter what number you pick, that number is a combination of 10 symbols. We have a vertical line to symbolize the number 1. We have something like a backwards letter, capital E, to symbolize the number 3. We have a 0 to us, which is symbolized by a circle, and so on. So we could count 0, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. But when we get to the next number, we don't have a new symbol for the number 10. What we do is we just have a 1 and a 0. Then we have a 1 and a 1, and a 1 and a 2, and a 1 and a 3. And so in a way, when we get to larger and larger numbers, we're always using the same 10 symbols. We're just now repeating them where you have a tens place. And after we get through a 1 and a 9, we then turn that 1 into a 2 for 20 and 21 and 22. So no matter what number you are thinking of, we usually will represent that number as some combination of these 10 symbols, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then to signify larger numbers, you just repeat some of those numbers. The idea of binary numbers is the exact same thing, except instead of repeating 10 digits, you only use 2 digits to symbolize the number. So the number 1 is going to be the same in binary and in our base 10 system that we use every day. Well, we already use the number 1, so if we want to go 1 digit higher to the number 2, we need to increase the 2's place. So this 0 will become a 1, and the number 2 is symbolized in binary as 1, 0. If we want to symbolize the number 3 in binary, we would say 1, 1. Now, the ones place and the twos place are used up, so we need to go increase the fours place. And so 100 would be the number 4 in binary, 101 would be the number 5 in binary, and so on. And if you follow this pattern, every time we use up a place, we have 111, we need to then increase this place, the 8's place in binary. So the numbers 1 through 10 across this top row are the numbers in binary. So this square at the very bottom, we will ignore. You could maybe think of it like a placeholder or something. So here would be 001 for 1. Here would be 010 for 010 for 2. 011, 011 for 3. 100 for the number 4. 101, 110 for the number 6, 111 for the number 7, and then the 8's place is beginning slightly shifted to the right. So these top 10, this row are the 10 numbers, the base 10 counting system that we use. Now below that are the numbers of the elements that are very common and necessary for life on Earth. Hydrogen is element number 1, carbon is element number 6, nitrogen is 7, oxygen is 8. So presumably these numbers in red here should be 1, 6, 7, 8. So here would be 0001, 0110. So 0110 is at 6, 0110 is 6. Then this would be 0111, that would be 7, element number 7 is nitrogen. Over here, this column would be 1000, element number 8 is oxygen, and so on. And then we have formula for the chemical building blocks of DNA, something that looks like a DNA double helix, the shape of a human being, what we look like. This symbol over here indicates how tall we are on average, and this symbol is in relation to how many times the wavelength of the light that this message is carried on. Down here is a picture of our solar system. Earth is somewhat designated to stand out, and right below the person. Over here is the human population at the time the message was sent. During this time, we have the sun, and Pluto was still a planet, and a picture of the telescope from which it was sent, and in binary, the size of this telescope. So this information, even though this picture is only 1679 pixels, it contains a lot of information about humans and the Earth. It has our height, our human population, the elements that we're made of, something about our DNA, something about our technology. And if you want more detailed information on this, you could go to the Wikipedia page on the Arecibo message. So you might ask, what about the purported sightings of UFOs and alien abductions? What should we make of those? Well, using a line of reasoning similar to when we estimated the number of intelligent civilizations in our galaxy with the Drake equation, we could make an estimate for the number of reasonable and credible sounding alien encounters on Earth. Begin with the population of the Earth, which is about 7.5 billion today. And you could reasonably expect some of those people will just make something up for attention or for other reasons. Other people might have a normal physical experience in everyday life, but they might misinterpret it for whatever reason. And of those people, what is the probability they will tell someone? And given that, how many people will they tell? And of those people, how many will they tell? And we'll just stop here. What is the probability that details get slightly nudged and changed during retelling and retelling again? And what fraction of those people that have had this experience are going to have the means to share their story with a wider audience if they are on forums or blogs? So much of the world today is connected by the internet. This is a huge number. And what we find is you could get a huge number of credible sounding encounters with extraterrestrials, but that doesn't mean this actually ever occurred in human history. So this does just because something sounds credible doesn't mean these reports are reliable. If you really want to have credibility, you need to produce some type of evidence. So I say this speaking as a scientist. If you ever happen to come across some type of evidence or proof of extraterrestrial encounters, please come to me. I want to be involved in that discovery. I would love to be involved in that discovery. Now, it is up to you to actually produce this evidence. You can't just come up saying you know extraterrestrials have come to Earth. You need to produce the evidence that's testable and falsifiable. And this evidence needs to be tested by independent researchers, and they need to be allowed access to the evidence. Now, every scientist I know, and I am saying every scientist that I have personally know, where I have been to their house, I have had dinner with them, every scientist I know would be absolutely thrilled to be involved in what is arguably the most important scientific discovery in human history. So, in terms of important discoveries, yes, I would absolutely love my name to be on that paper as an author. So please come to me if you ever have evidence of extraterrestrials coming to Earth. I would be absolutely happy and have no problem keeping you up to date with what is going on during the time in which we are testing that evidence that you presented. I have no problem having you being involved with that testing. I will happily keep you confident that the integrity of your evidence is being protected. I will happily let you know what tests are being conducted, why they're being conducted, and so on. So please, if you ever come across evidence of extraterrestrials visiting Earth, come to me. I would love that. So watch What Alien Abductions Say About Our Brains by SciShow. This is going to be linked at the end of the PHY 114 playlist. And if you happen to have access to Showtime, Penn and Teller Season 1, Episode 3 of their show Bullshit provides a very entertaining critical analysis of alien abduction claims. This show is not required watching for this course. In order to watch it, you need a streaming subscription to Showtime. So if you don't have that, don't worry about it. I just want to mention it here because it's a really nice, well-done episode, and it is related to what we're discussing. And just in case you don't want to watch shows that are sometimes off-color, this show does have vulgarity, off-color humor, sometimes nudity in it. So just check the IMDb website for more specific content-related information in case this is something that would be important to you. Now, for the purpose of TV shows and movies, I think alien abductions and UFOs can be a very entertaining plot device to work into those. I think The X-Files is a very well-made TV show, so go ahead, enjoy giant government conspiracies and alien encounters. Enjoy them in the same way you would enjoy The Lord of the Rings, Doctor Who, Star Trek, or any of the other really famous, well-made sci-fi or fantasy TV shows and movies that are out there. Unfortunately, there are also people who prey on others and otherwise look to profit by spreading ignorance and conspiracies. And these people that spread conspiracies to those who lack critical thinking skills, these people absolutely suck. These characters hate critical thinking. So in conclusion, I would like to say this guy sucks, this guy sucks, this guy sucks, this guy's really cool, but this guy could go and eat a dog turd.